this interesting fly, very Newfoundland fly, it's called the dirty bomber. And it's supposed to look like this. It's one of the most wild and woolly flies I've ever seen in my life. This is the way it's tied. It's supposed to look kind of crazy. Fun fly to tie because it's so wild. You really don't have to be too neat with it. Anyway, starts off with a nice big. This is a size 6 bomber hook, and nice long shank. Because of the long shank, you really want to make sure that that's well secured in the jaws of your tying vise. And here I'm using it's a gel-spun thread. Really like the gel-spun for spinning deer hair like this. Now, interesting thing about gel-spun and deer hair is that it's all very slippery, and so's this metal hook shank. And so one of the things that I'm going to do here is really make an effort to get things locked into place. We want to spin the deer hair, but we obviously don't want to spin this calf tail and the whole back half of the fly when we're spinning the deer hair. So one of the things that I found really helpful is to just make sure that things are locked down super well. I may be a little overboard here, but what I'm going to do is put some super glue on there, wrap through it, and the pressure of those wraps help to set the super glue. And I'm going to do this several times actually. Now the tail on this, as you can see in the example, is calf tail, but they've cut it off, and as a fly tyer, that's going to be very hard for me to do. I really like leaving calf tail long, but this is the way they do it. So this is kind of a first for me, taking perfectly good calf tail and snipping it off square. Give a little counterclockwise spin as if you're looking down on it of my bobbin. Helps that thread to jump rearward. And before I get too far, I'm going to take my super glue, put another real ample drop on there, and wrap through it just to make sure that stuff can't spin and isn't going anywhere. All right. And again, it's going to be super hard for me to do. I really want to leave that calf tail natural, but tradition is to snip it off. Okay. That didn't hurt so bad. Anyway, next material that gets tied in is chartreuse deer belly hair. Nice and hollow, flares well, spins well. You know, oftentimes it's desirable to spin on a bare hook shank because it's slippery, but it's really not essential. You can kind of get it to spin around just about anything. Gonna cut a real nice big clump. About the rear, I don't know, what is it? Rear third of the fly is chartreuse deer hair, and the front is more of a gray deer hair. I don't happen to have any of that, so I'm going to use white for now. Lay the deer hair one light turn, take a second turn, and just as you can see, it just spins around real nicely there. So why am I tying thread through? So I use this little tool. It's just a hollowed out plunger style hackle plier. Helps me compress and get that deer hair held back. I can bring my thread right out in front. Again, just don't, particularly with this fly, don't sweat the neatness. It really doesn't matter. In fact, it's better if it looks kind of all over the place. So another clump of deer hair. Try to get, like I said, about a quarter to a third of the rear part of the hook covered with the chartreuse. spin around there. I might go one more clump of that. Yeah, you can probably see here, I'm not combing out the deer hair. You certainly can if you want, but I'm just going fast. Just cleaning it out a little bit. Nice big clump. You know, deer hair is much thicker down at the base than it is up at the top and hollower, so I'm going to try to use the lower part of that clump. And once, twice, spin that. Just get a little more hollow hair in there, a little more float to the pattern. And here, this is another reason for really locking that tail in place with the super glue. I'm going to take my little tool here and just force all that deer hair back. Really compress it. Might have gone a little overboard on the length of that chartreuse for this fly, but we'll just jam it back there. We're still looking pretty good. I think that's okay. So I'm going to switch over to white. The fly does really look good with this gray deer hair front part on it, but like I said, I don't have any of the gray. We'll just go with white. I really don't think the salmon are going to care all that much. You can use deer body hair for these, but the hair from the belly of the deer is much more hollow, flares a little better, and helps the fly to float a little bit more. You can see how it really wants to spin around that hook shank. Yeah, I'm going to push it back, use my little tool to compress it. If you want to, just keep the tool in place, drop a couple of wraps in there so they're right in tight by that deer hair. With any of these kind of bomber style flies, there are a myriad of ways to tie them. And I know I don't tie in a very traditional manner here, but it works for me, and that's what a lot of fly tying is about. You know, they're really, I don't believe anyway, that there are any really hard and fast rules. Whatever works for you, and you know, your level of tying ability, the materials you have, really whatever it takes to kind of get the job done. And I wouldn't get too hung up on this being the absolute technique that you have to use. Kind of do your own thing in many cases. So we've really filled most of that hook shank up with deer hair. I do need to leave some room up here because I have to tie in both another clump of calf body hair as well as a hackle. So I am gonna leave just a little bit of room there. Now, I'm gonna just use my tool to dump a few half hitches right in front. And then this gel spun, it does not cut well with scissors. A razor blade is much more effective at cutting it. Because I do like to trim these things outside of my tying vise, preferably over a trash can. All right, I just hack at it, you know, cut it into a little, just so you can see what you're doing, you know, get that big, those natural hair points off of there, and then start getting in and working to that final sort of cigar shape, if you will. Tapers front and back, and a little fatter in the middle. Really want to, and I just realized probably the most important step of all, I'm going to take care of it right here and now. In Newfoundland, they're barbless hooks only, so we are absolutely going to mash the barb really well. I usually do that before I put it in my tying vise, but I do want to snip that bottom part off nice and close. Want to keep that hook gap as open as possible. Give the salmon every chance to get hooked that we can. Now I'm just kind of going around and shaping, taking that square down into more of a cylinder. Some people will put little painter's tape around the tail of the fly here, just so when you're doing this you don't snip your tail off. But I'm gonna roll the dice here today. Try not to stab yourself in the process. So like I said, this fly is supposed to be kind of haphazard looking, if you will, and I don't want to neaten it up too much. I do want to clear an ample spot up by the eye for some calf tail and a hackle. All right, we're getting there. Got a bad feeling I made that too neat. So I was using white gel spun before. I'm going to replace that with a black, smaller diameter thread here. Get that thread started. Make sure it's anchored really, really well. Snip that. I am going to take that down just a little bit more. Remove some of that volume. Trim that back. There we go. Okay, kind of a tricky part with this calf tail is sneaking a nice ample clump. Let's see this. That's a pretty ample clump of calf tail snuck in there. I'm not sure if I'm going to get that, be able to go that big. We'll give it a try. I'm going to put a little tying wax on my thread. This gives it some bite. I'm just going to see if I can't get a nice few wraps around there and put some pressure on it. Get that to tighten up. Pull it up in front. Take a few wraps around there and then really lock it down in place like that. I'm actually going to tuck a few more wraps under there just to get that to prop up a little bit, if I could. There we go. So nice and wild and woolly, just like the original. Next step is the hackle, and I'm using just a little saddle hackle here. If you get the strung stuff, that'll work. All those feathers that you never end up using on anything else, you can use here. Big, webby, schlappen will work. It's just kind of the stuff that doesn't get used and works perfect for this fly. Gonna strip the stem off, take a little more from the top edge there, just to ensure that it wraps correctly. Get that really, really well secured. Don't want that pulling out when you go to wrap it. Just gonna wrap back on that stem. Snip that excess stem off close. Now, what I'm going to do, pull the feather forward and I cord up my tying thread. Give it a clockwise spin as if I'm looking down on it. And then I'm going to take my tying thread under quite a bit of pressure and just sneak it in there through the deer hair. And hopefully we're not going to see any or much black wraps in there, maybe a little at the back. Then we can take the hackle feather, and I really want to get a nice wrap up front and then open spiral wraps back, sinking that hackle stem right into the spun deer hair like that. When I reach my tying thread, we use it to anchor the stem. Anchor it really well back there. You can snip or hopefully just break the hackle stem off. Fluff that out a little bit. Now what I'm going to try to do is take my tying thread and wind it back through the deer hair. Bury the tying thread in the deer hair, but cross wrap over that delicate hackle stem as I go. Just zigzagging back and forth, trying not to trap too many hackle fibers. And at the same time, really get down into the deer hair. Okay. Now, two choices. You can whip finish behind that wing, or I'm gonna try anyway. I'm gonna pull that wing back and get some wraps around just behind the hook eye. A good strong place to have your final wraps is behind the hook eye. Got a little bit of stuff clogging the eye, which I don't want. Just snip that out. Good to go. And then a nice big drop. Important to get some head cement on this one. There's a lot of stuff that's tied in right behind the eye, and you really want to saturate those wraps with some head cement. And always a good idea, just to make sure that none of that head cement is stuck down in there, just use your bodkin and clean that eye out. And so there we go. That is the Dirty Bomber. Kind of a crazy looking fly, but I am told that they work like a charm here in Newfoundland. Neat stuff.